Oh,
Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator. We have Lauren Michaels Harris here with us today. How you doing, Lauren?
I'm good. You caught me jamming. I was jamming.
Yeah, I caught you jamming. I like that T-shirt. Life is good, huh?
It is.
Where are you from, Lauren?
That's a toughie.
Yeah.
You know, I'm from the foster system, so you know I'm still not used to when someone asks me that question, what the right answer should be. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Isn't that an oddity? I was born in Berrien Springs, Michigan, and I lived in a town called Niles, Michigan for most of my younger years until my adoptive mom died, and then it was a hit and miss from then on. You know.
Right.
So I claim when I say Niles, because I went back there after I aged out and stuff like that. So I say Niles, Michigan.
Okay. And Niles, where is that in relationship to, let's say, Lansing?
Oh, about 3 hours down, Southwest Michigan, down by Kalamazoo, Benton Harbor, Notre Dame. So Niles is on the border of Michigan and Indiana. So you can leave Niles and go straight into pretty much South Bend, Indiana. There's Roseland, but there's, South Bend where Notre Dame is at. It's like right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's interesting, your reaction to the question, where are you from? Because while I think it's one of the most important questions to be able to answer, a lot of adults find that to be a tough question. And I saw that in you today. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that was a tough question?
Mm-hmm.
Well, from my perspective, first of all, because I'm usually the one doing the interviews.
Okay.
Asking the question. And right. And then any other time, it's in my bio already. And I just say, what do I say in there? That's a good question. I don't think that's in there, actually. It's not. That's a good one. I never even considered that. I think it's because, it's like when you grow up in the system, you kind of have a nomad mentality. Mm-hmm. Home is the most recent place you laid your head. And right. Then, I moved out of the system into another system, getting out there and trying to find out who I was, looking for my birth family. And then I had my experience in the drug world where I had an addiction for almost 14 years. And that too is based in the same nomad mentality that the system had already ingrained in me.
Right.
So, I felt like I came from a feeder system. The foster system for me was a feeder system to hand me off, which it does to a lot of kids.
So in other words, you see it as having been a pipeline.
Pipeline.
So you feel like you came out of a pipeline.
Yeah.
Wow. I was talking to one of my brothers one day, and we were talking about life in general. And I actually was practicing that question on people. I have another one that I generally ask. Maybe we'll get to that in just a second here. But my brother said that he felt like in life he was being pushed along the sidewalk in a stroller, and then the stroller came to a stop. And when he looked around, there was nobody pushing it. He never got out of that stroller until he was old enough and strong enough and big enough to climb out of it himself.
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to that point, I think that you should always be prepared to talk about where you come from. As they say, that's the best way to know where you're going.
This is true.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us a little bit about your childhood?
Absolutely not. Kidding. I'm kidding. Well,
it's a good thing to know.
Well, it's an interesting thing. And I'll tell you, my story's a little different because it wasn't until I got into this career, and I'll never forget, I had been on the Steve Olster show, and Steve has a syndicated radio show. And then when it was over, he asked me about a week later, he said, Lauren, I've got such a huge response about your show. I was wondering if you could provide me with some photos of when you were a little boy, the boy who we talked about on the show. And because I want to use it when I go on my stage tour to talk about it, and I want to put it up on the big screens. And, you know, I really hadn't even realized it, but I didn't even have any pictures.
Right.
I didn't know what I looked like as a child because, number one, I was taken from my birth mother when I was just a few days old with the promise that they would return me when she got on her feet. And, you know, in my Goldcast video, I say in there, where love becomes unconditional, people make decisions that they ordinarily would not have. And my adoptive mom decided, which she was never really my adoptive mom because I wasn't legally adopted, I was more or less taken. And that's a hard pill to swallow because I loved her as my mom and I still see her in my mind. But it wasn't until I came to the understanding that all 22 of my mothers each played the specific role in my life that God chose them to play in my life. And so I don't hold any animosity or ill will to my adoptive mom for what she did, even though, you know, when I met my birth mother at age 32, you know, she waited and waited. And it wasn't until I'd known her a few years that she pulled out the letter and showed it to me. And I knew the handwriting. I'd forged it enough on parent teacher conference notes. So I knew my mom's handwriting. And, you know, she had said in there, I'm sorry, when you came to check on the baby, we had moved, but I moved because I didn't know how to tell you that the baby had died. So, you know, it makes you think, you know, what kind of woman were you and this sort of thing. And not to mention, you know, when I got this information and I started to run it past my adoptive family members, you know, they all kind of turned on me because I'm messing with our mother's dead mother's memory. And so nobody wanted to hear that, you know, and so I had to take it and just not care about what I had to release, you know, the need to share it with other people and just take it for what it was. But I'm glad I did. There are no mistakes on this planet, just miracles and blessings that are in the process of becoming. And so I knew that it would be no different. Right. So, you know, when you say talk about your childhood, childhood is like an all-encompassing era for most people. It's for most people. But mine wasn't because the childhood, and then we had 2 house fires growing up. So the pictures that I might have had were all burned. And then the rest, and there weren't many because I didn't really exist. You got to understand, I was in a private school all my life up until then under another name. I was Larry Dixon, you know, until a week after my mom died. And they came in and said, you ain't Larry Dixon. You're Lauren Harris. You're going to come with us. And they took me out of the home, and that was that.
So when you got adopted, your entire name got changed.
I was never adopted.
Oh, okay. What was the original reason? What was the original reason why you were taken out of your home?
Well, my adopted mom was a nurse at the hospital where my birth mother gave birth to me. And she had moved to Michigan from Arkansas along with 4 other women who all had left bad relationships. You know, my mom found out that my dad had 4 other families, you know, and was married to 2 of those other women. That's the same time he was married to her. So I was actually, I was his 19th kid. Papa was a Rolling Stone. Wherever he laid his hat was his home. So, you know, they had come here because there was work in the factories. They had limited education, most of these women. And in the early 1960s, 1961 was when she moved here. That's how it happened. But she wasn't even pregnant with me yet. Our father, all 4 of my siblings and I, there were 5 of us in total, all had the same father. And well, that's not true. 3 of us had the same father, 2 did not. And there was older 2 and me have the same father. And then there were 2 between me and those that didn't. So he came back through. He would come through to drop off money and stuff. He was an over-the-road truck driver. And apparently, according to my oldest brother, he told me, and I never did get to talk to my mom about this because he asked me not to. And so she went to her grave not knowing that I knew this. But long story short, he came through one time and actually raped her. And my brother said, I'm the one who helped get her. She had a broken wrist and cracked ribs, and her lip was busted, and her clothes were all torn. And I helped her pick up the room and get her in bed, and we never discussed it again. But Lauren, 9 months later, you came along. So those are tough things, you know. So when you hear all these different versions and you remember all the different snippets of it, and most of them you did not have control over. It wasn't like I crawled out of my crib and said, forward my formula. I'm out of here. You know, it didn't happen that way. You know, it's hard to put it together into one childhood. I feel like I had.
It's very fragmented.
Very fragmented, and no pictures to tie it together. No one talks about it in my families, in either family. We talk about what we had when I was there, and that was it. No one ever asks me about the time that I was in the system. What was it like? Nobody.
Right.
From either family, it's like they want to go. And when my birth mom, I remember that when she made them, she asked me like the second day we were visiting with each other after we met, and she goes, "So, what was it like in there?" And I wasn't even 5 minutes into the first story, and she covered her ears up and jumped up and ran out of the room. No, I can't take it anymore. Don't tell me anymore. And I was like, wow, for real? Yeah. So.
Yep. And so when your childhood is fragmented like that, and so many people were passersby in your overall experience, you become the one with the memory of what actually happened, the most total memory of what happened, and your memory of what happened becomes the most important as far as the future is concerned, because you had so many different adults that stepped in along the way that don't know about the other stories that took place in your life. And that's the reason why I find it so important for us to tell our stories. And that's also the reason why here on America's Next Motivator, we start with your recollection of your childhood, because if you ask 5 or 10 different people about your childhood, you'll get 5 or 10 different stories.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's extremely important for whether it be youth in foster care today, teenagers, or other adults out there in the world who never got to tell their story to know, hey, Lauren Michaels Harris didn't just turn into a superstar last night. You know, this man had some experiences that made him into a kaleidoscope of a mirror that now enables him to share these colorful and wonderful different stories and narratives about life. What did you think about how did you feel when your identity changed because you went into the child welfare system?
You know, that's a great question. It isn't what people would think, because I was still not ready to let go of. I was just, you got to understand, my mom had her stroke on a Wednesday. She was buried the next Wednesday. And the next Monday, social services came and took me out of our home and said, "You're not who you think you are," and blah, blah, blah. So I was still grieving. And I will say this too, you know, I didn't get a chance to even process yet the fact that I had a new name, because I hadn't started school yet. I got there that Monday in the first foster home, and the abuser in that home came for me that very first night. So before I could even get to the thing about the name not being the same anymore, because I'm going to start school in a day or two, now I have something to deal with that I never knew even existed. You know, I did not know until maybe 3 hours before that abuser came through that hole in that wall that there was even such a thing as one of those.
Right. Wow.
I didn't know. And the little boys that were sharing the room with me tried to warn me. They would, those three, I have a necklace. I should have worn it. It's upstairs. I wear it when I'm on stage in front of foster kids and stuff, because each one is a stone to represent those three boys, because none of them made it out of the system alive, not one of them. And and I owe them so much, because they were the ones who, you know, forced me to turn over from crying and, you know, "I want to talk to you, leave me alone," you know, and they're like, "Turn over, new kid." And there was a mattress, a twin mattress up against a wall across the room. And it was very interesting, because the three boys, one was the same age as me, one was 7. And then there was the youngest one, Andrew, who was, I think, 3, almost 4. And he was the spokesperson, and he was like a little old man. And he really, I mean, really was like a little old man. And, but I found out later why he was so seasoned. It was because he'd been in the system longer than any of us, because he was born in prison and handed straight from one institution into the next. And he said, "Listen, you got to listen to what we got to tell you." He said, "You see that mattress over there?" And he didn't even look at it. He's looking at me and he goes, "You see that mattress over there?" Staring me straight. And I looked, And I looked at him, oh, yeah. He goes, well, there's a hole behind that mattress and it leads to the room next to us. It's always locked and that closet is locked, but there's 2 keys that it takes to get in there. And there's one man in this house and he has both of those keys and he never lets them out of his sight. And because you're the new kid, he's going to use both of those keys tonight. And he's going to come through that hole. He's going to move that mattress and he's coming for you. So there's some things we need to tell you so you don't get hurt. Don't pretend like you're sleeping. Don't pretend, don't cry. All kinds of different things. And while they're telling me these things, I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? And then it just starts to make sense. And, you know, you would think that nothing could stomp out like a cigarette, grind it out in the ground. The fact that the only mother you've ever known has just suddenly died and been buried. You would think that nothing could, you know, quench the flame on the candle that you still need to use to look at the fact that you are not the person with the name that you've had all your life before any of those things, because all of a sudden there is a real proverbial monster and he's not under the bed. He's literally coming through that wall. And I remember like 3 hours later, I was going to sleep, kind of watching from underneath my blanket. And I'll never forget when those 4 fingers came through that hole to get around the side of that mattress to slide it to the side. And that was when it was like everything from that point forward got barricaded inside of a brick room. Everything went somewhere. You know, kids are very resilient. They persevere, but you know, your body, your mind protects you from things that are going to be too much for you.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, it took decades to unearth what happened. It took decades.
Right. And you may have never told your story the way that you're going to tell it this evening, because we're going to get deep tonight. The reason why we're going to get deep tonight is because those corridors of your story have to be exposed and they have to be provided so that we could see a clear path from whatever we may be going through to the best possible outcomes that we can have in our life, because that's what you did. That's what you did. And so today we're going to pave a clear pathway from what happened then and what's happening now. And so I want to know, how did you adapt when you experienced abuse like you had never had before? Because based on what you're saying, you weren't experiencing abuse before you went into the system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you were almost naive. Probably was very talented already, but you were a little bit naive to abuse and maltreatment by people who you don't even know. And what did you think when you got into that room with those 3 boys and realized how awake they were about life, how aware they were about the dangers that were existing? What did you think about their mature mentality at such a young age?
Their story, I've answered this question before in my own mind. Their story, when they were telling it to me, it was the same as if you've ever walked in someone's house and it smelled like fried food. Like if someone had fried fish or potatoes. It has a heaviness that just clings to everything. That's what it felt like. It felt like they were spraying my world with a scent that I would never be able to wash away, that I would never be able to leave behind. You know, and for many decades, I really did believe that those scarlet letters, and there were many of those, you know, from the experiences, and I'm sure you probably know about some of them. Maybe not, but most kids in the system do. They, you know, they begin to, they're always there, but what one day I was faced with it, and it was decades and decades later, when I was faced with the option of either do something about it, face it now, or it'll feel like a tattoo. Right now, it's Velcro. You can still pull it off. It is not of you. If you really want it off, you can get it off. If you don't do it now, Lauren, you're going to spend the rest of your life carrying it around, and it will become a permanent tattoo.
Right.
Right. Like it wasn't my fault.
Right. You know? It wasn't your fault. And what I remember, based on what you're saying right now, is that those other young people in that home with you, they were like little adults. They were like little, 4 and 5-year-old adults, and they were welcoming you to this mentality of survival. And quite often I talk about survival as a means of getting people to understand that there's different phases in life. That survival phase is a deep phase. Everybody does not have something to say about survival, but survival is a very real thing, and that's what you were getting accustomed to at that particular time in your life. I want you to talk about what elementary school was for you, and what were the smells and the scenes that you experienced. How were you treated in elementary school?
Well, interestingly enough, because I was basically in hiding with from my birth family, I was in private school all my life. And so when I entered the system, unlike most kids in the system that are remedial because of being moved around so frequently, I, on the other hand, was like 2-3 years ahead of my classmates.
Okay.
Excuse me. So I never had to go to, back then it was called the special ed room, and now it's called special needs. So I wasn't none of that. And even in the group home settings where they had trailers, on the front premises and kids went to school, I always went to the public schools. So, and the great part about that, it made it easy for me to be whoever I wanted to be. No one ever knew. No one ever knew, unless I went to school with somebody who happened to be in the house, like one of the real kids, one of the siblings of the foster home. And they would let my secret out. If it wasn't for that, no one would ever know. When I got to the place where I was in junior high and high school, and I got so old that the older you get, the closer you get to congregate care, which are group homes. So when I finally hit the group home setting, I'd get off the bus sometimes 2-3 miles from the group home and get off in the neighborhoods that resembled the one I came from. And and it wasn't until, my friend now, he's a friend of mine now. He's a professor at Stanford College in Birmingham. And Fred Shepard. And he actually saw me from a park one day, and we were good friends. I would visit his house, and he saw me coming in and going out of the group home because it was a institutional looking building. And we rode the same bus, and he still watched me get off for a couple of weeks at a fake spot. And because I thought people thought I lived on Apple Valley Way because all the beautiful homes were there and stuff, and he said, "Why did I see you going into that building where those kids live? The state building," he called it. And I was like, he goes, "Were you visiting somebody?" He knew. And he told me, he goes, you don't have to hide that from me. And that was the beginning. And we're still friends now. I go down there every now and then and visit Fred and his family. But if it hadn't been for him in my life and letting me know that it was okay, that, I probably would have carried that same mentality of hiding behind the real me well into probably to today, and not been able to do what I do today. It took me 5 decades to get to, that's why I've only been in this business for 4 years.
Right. But even at that time, the seeds were being planted of maturity. So your life has changed at an early age. You attempted to use school as an alternate reality, but then your secret came out because people saw you going and coming. So now you have to deal with facing the hard reality that you're now living in foster care, and it's totally unlike what you're used to. You're a star. You're good at reading and writing and communicating for yourself, but you are now in a pretty much a bad position in life. I want to ask, were you now that your secret was out, were you ever in school and a social worker came to pick you up right in the middle of the class?
No.
Okay.
No, I never. It's interesting how, the two worlds never collided. And I did things, like junior achievement, and I played tennis and gymnastics and did all the things that you wouldn't think, because it was a very expensive thing, you know, being on the tennis team and all the things you had to get, and gymnastics was the same way. But we had surrogate parents in the group home that I lived in, and they treated me like I was really their kid. The surrogate mom and surrogate dad that I had, they were people from the I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the group home, and so these were all graduate students at U of M, and so you know they had resources, I guess, and they had, you know, me and a couple other kids in the building were their surrogate children, and we were surrogate brothers and sisters, and they paid all my things. And and then I also had a sister from my adopted family that would come and visit, and you know, brought me my color TV. I was the only kid in the group home with its own color TV, and she would come, her and her husband, and visit. And you know, they helped too. They, you know, paid for things for me. And so it was good. But then, you know, you get to the part where you get age out. And, you know, back then when you had a FAFSA and, you know, you're applying for financial aid and stuff, they didn't have anything inside of there for a kid coming out of the foster system. It was all about have your parents fill out this, and this. If you didn't have parents, you were just crap out of luck.
Right. So by the time you got to high school, how did you feel about the so-called scarlet letters that you had on your chest, which were FC for foster care or FK for foster kid? Had you dealt with those scarlet letters yet?
It didn't matter. There were people who knew by then. And I mean, it didn't matter. I was in student government. I graduated with honors. I was in, you know, a class officer. It just didn't matter. It didn't matter. That stuff never mattered to everyone else. But because I don't know how I looked at it from the inside out, but later in life, a few years down the road, when I'm out, you know, and things are going well for me out in California. You know, I'm getting record deals and I'm doing all kinds of things musically, and going on the road with some celebrities singing background vocals, and getting hired over and over and over to do jingles, all kinds of wonderful things. The People magazine thing happened out there, started a business that had never been in this world before.
Now this was after high school?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, when I finished high school, I went straight into Up With People. So Up With People is a music group, and they made me a soloist because I didn't even know I could sing until.
So you know how to sing?
Huh?
You know how to sing?
Yeah.
When did you realize that you could sing?
When I went to Up With People training, and they make everybody go through dance auditions, MC auditions, and soloist auditions, and they made me a soloist. So you know, you're training for 6 weeks before you go on your tour, and then suddenly, you know, we left straight from Tucson, Arizona, and went to Mexico City, Mexico. And that very night, I sang 2 solos in a bull arena with 5,000 Mexican people throwing roses at me. And so, and I was hooked. You know, I'm hooked. I mean, they're like going crazy, and you're like, oh my God, this is great. You know. And so I went straight from Up With People into the military because that was I needed someone to take care of me, to help me get the things I needed in that start in life. So when I got in the Air Force, they have a competition at your base, and then base level, command level, and then worldwide. And I was blessed enough to compete 2 years in a row, and I won worldwide both years. And so I got to travel inside a thing called Tops and Blue and do nothing but perform within the military. And while I was in there, I met my music manager. They signed me to a contract. And when I separated from the military, I went straight to Hollywood and walked right into a record deal.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Lauren Michaels Harris. He's had an incredible journey through foster care, after foster care, and now he has a life that is a story worth telling. We're going to be right back with more questions for Lauren, because his story is going to inspire many right after this brief message.
Oh.
And we're back.
Okay.
Lauren, I want to know who helped you to advance your mentality out of high school and into a place such as the Air Force, did you have any mentors, counselors, or adults in your life that were encouraging, or was this something that was just a part of your original makeup?
I know that sounds really crazy, and I wish there were a litany of names, a laundry list, if you could, of that. But no, all those decisions I made on my own, because I wasn't ready to be homeless. That would come later,
Right?
I dreamed. I've always had the capacity to dream big, and I think that's because as a young, all through, even before my mom died and after, I was a bookworm. I lived inside the Hardy Boys, the Boxcar Children, every series of books, even Nancy Drew, and boys weren't supposed to read those. I read them all, and Little House on the Prairie, and any book of adventure. I read them all, Moby Dick, and on and on and on. And so that helped germinate the seed inside my mind to allow me to dream beyond the borders I could see. And I really believe it. Yes, dream it, then achieve it. Absolutely. And that was the thing that I think carried me completely through the foster care thing, even through those years of darkness with the drug addiction. And because, I couldn't really enjoy the successes out in Los Angeles because there was that biological pull to know who I really was. Are they out there? I remember when that People magazine came out, I just knew that would be my chance, that my family would see me in there and go, hey, look, that guy has our name. He looks just like us. And that they'd come and find me and say, come home with us. And
let me ask you something. When did the anxiety of what you had been through come back to be dealt with? When did it resurface as something that you needed to deal with? I know that you talk about wanting to connect with your biological family, or hoping that at some point there will be a sense of reconnection. And that desire brings about a certain anxiety. When did that surface for you? Because we know that you eventually went through some more challenges.
It surfaced, to be honest with you, starting with Up With People right out of high school, when it was every success like a rabid animal that sprayed its scent all over everything. So all of my successful achievements, the accomplishments, the competitions and things back then, people would tell me, Lauren, oh my goodness, you have the Midas touch. Everything I went for, even while I was still in the system, and I went out for, through junior achievement up in Ann Arbor, which is very competitive, outstanding young businessman contest, and I won. So it wasn't, science fairs and whatever I tried, I would win. I'm just telling you, it would work that way. But then, when I got into my adult life and I'm getting things that mattered, like, record deals and opportunities to travel and this and the other, I started sabotaging everything.
Right.
With my record deal, all I had to do was sit inside of a luxury condo, play tennis for a couple hours a day with the tennis pro, and then sit behind a piano and write music every day. And
Lauren, I want to pause you right here, because this particular juncture is what thousands of young people are going through. Young adults, they're not children anymore. They're young adults. They are your entry-level professionals around the world. They're your new artists on your record labels. They're your rookie athletes. They're your new level rock stars. Your 21-year-old rock stars around the world right now. They were stars just like you. They were intelligent. They were articulate, but that did not change the fact that something damaged them when they were younger. And that's something that damaged them when they were younger. It never went away because you did the very best that you could in school. It never went away because you were able to make other people laugh and smile. That thing that happened, like you said, when that abuser's four fingers came around to pull away to get to you, that traumatic experience, it never left. It was insidious while you were a believer.
A little different though. Honestly,
okay.
for me, I can only speak for me. And to be honest with you, all the things that took me down to the lowest depths, it really was not those things. I dealt with those, But it wasn't that. It was the fact when it finally came out, because I went through a therapist and hypnotherapy, and it came out. It was the fact that I had never been allowed to grieve. You know, they planted a trigger word in me. And when I walked into the session that next week, she's in that picture back there, because that's how I got to People Magazine, because of her. And she said, told me that when I came to the next session, she'd say chocolate chip cookie, and I would automatically begin to grieve. And I woke up like 4.5 hours later on the floor. My eyes were swollen shut and my throat was burning. Oh, my chest was hurting. And she was holding me and rocking me, and I had, there was just a pile of Kleenex and stuff and a wet towel on my forehead, because she said I did nothing but cry. Why'd you leave me? All that kind of stuff. And I had never been allowed. No one ever sat and explained it to me. No one ever told me it wasn't my fault, about my name and about my family. And my family told me the day that the state took me away. This was the second time in 1 week that I'd seen this scenario. The first was when I waved goodbye to the ambulance, thinking my mom would be home in a few hours. She never came home again. And then there I was in the back seat looking out the window of the state car, and they were all waving at me goodbye, and I would never come back again. And they were telling me it's just red tape. We'll have you home in a few days. And that never happened. So, you know, it wasn't those things. It was what really tore me out of my mind was that I needed to know why I wasn't with my original family. I needed to know where they were, what happened. I couldn't, no matter what was going on in my life as far as successes, they didn't mean anything. People thought I was crazy. What is wrong with you? Why are you have everything. People come out to LA and never even get to sample a little bit of what you're being handed. What is wrong with you? But you know what? It taught me then that, you know, things are just things. And I knew that I could not stop until I found my family. And it took me until I was 32 years old. And you know what? The crazy part about it is that even though I was back in the town where they were from, where it originated, and I would go through the phone book and call all the Harrises and say, do you know? And they'd say, didn't you call us 5 years ago? Didn't you call us 8 years ago? We told you then. I said, I know, but I thought maybe somebody might have remembered something by now. And I was actually there to go to school is what I was telling my adoptive family, but I was really secretly looking for my birth family. And because I was from out of state, I had to write a check at the grocery store or anywhere. You needed I still had my California driver's license. I had my birth certificate and I had a school ID. And I went to the grocery store that morning because I had been up the night before starting a business plan for a business I was going to start. Excuse me. And I got really depressed. And I had been calling people all day. And nobody had anything new. And I couldn't take it anymore. So I went to Myers and I bought a bunch of razor blades. I bought a big gallon jug of Ernest and Julie Gallo wine. I bought a couple candles. And I bought some baby Orajel. And I bought the Whitney Houston Bodyguard soundtrack. I got home and I canceled the newspaper. I called the lease company that I had a car with and told them to come get it the next day. And I took out all the trash and I filled the bathtub up and I drank as much of the wine as I could. And I was sitting in the bathtub and I had, it's so funny now, I had on replay that song from the Bodyguard. That's where I have nothing. Right. I was playing it. I had it on repeat. And I was like, I feel you, Whitney. Right. I really did. And then I was really ready. And I put the baby Orajel on my wrist because I was like, in case this hurt, you know, I'm a numb it, right? So no kidding. I reached into the box of razor blades. And you know, they come with paper wrapped around them. I had the candle going and I'm ready. And I peeled it off and I'm feeling it is bumpy. I was like, bumpy. I get it under the candlelight. It's totally rusted. I went through the whole box. Every single one of the razor blades was rusted. I said, I can't use one of these. They're rusted. I'll get lockjaw. And I heard that voice said, aha, why would you care about lockjaw if you were going to be dead? And I was like, oh, yeah. And he said, get out of the tub. I got out of the tub and I fell asleep on top of all those papers in the living room that I was using to start the business. And I woke up the next morning with a horrible headache, of course, and I was starving. And I got up. I said, oh, I got to eat. And I said, oh, wait a minute. I threw all my food away. And I said, I go to the store. Wait, I told him to pick the car up. So I ran to the window and I looked down there and the car was still there. So I went to, wait a minute. Here's the best part.
Okay.
I went to the grocery store. And when it came time to pay for my food, I decided to use my IDs, the state ID, my driver's license and my school ID. And I didn't use the birth certificate, but it fell out of my day planner on the floor. And I didn't know it. When I went to get the change, because I got cash back from the check, I went to get the change and stuff from the silver thing. The coins fall out. And I looked and the woman behind me was reading something that was folded in the same, I could tell, plus you could see the seal from the state on the back. And I was like, I looked, I couldn't find my birth certificate. I said, excuse me, is that a birth certificate? She said, yeah. She goes, it was on the floor. I said, oh, thank you, that's mine. So she gave it to me. She was looking at me all weird. And I put it in and took myself, I'm out there putting it in the car. And she comes running out there without her groceries. She goes, hold on. God told me I can't let you go. I said, what? She goes, that address on that birth certificate. I said, yeah. She goes, I grew up on that street. My parents still live on that street. I said, that's impossible. I said, do they live in the projects? She goes, no, they live in a house. I said, wrong street, because I've been there many times. There's nothing there but projects and one boarded up abandoned house. She goes, that house is abandoned. It's boarded up, but it's not abandoned. And she pointed, she said, you see that van over there? That's a handicap van. Both of my parents are wheelchair bound. My house is behind theirs on the next street. There's a ramp in between both of our properties. I boarded up their windows because every time I take them to the doctor and stuff, the kids from the projects break in and steal their microwaves and cordless phones and stuff. She goes, so I boarded it up so that they can't look in. She goes, but they still live there. And my mom has lived on that street for 67 years. If somebody had a baby on High Street in 1962 on the 4th of July, my mother will know her. Right. It was 20 minutes later, my phone rang and the woman said, well, my mother knows who it is, but her last name isn't Harris. Maybe she got remarried, but we know it's her. But we want to call her first because not everybody wants to be found. And I had never in all those years considered that I could get this close and she might say, no, I don't want. And that's in the Goldcast video. It had never, ever entered my mind that they would not want me to find them. And I was like, okay. So now I'm sitting up there going, oh my God. And my phone rang. And I picked it up. And I'm like, she goes, hey, Lauren, we reached her. And she said, give you her number. So instead of writing it down and gathering my thoughts, I just said, okay, give it to me. She gave me the number. Because I thought it was like, I felt like Cinderella, like it was going to turn into a pumpkin if I didn't hurry up. So I just dialed it. And I heard water running. She was washing dishes. And now I don't know what to say. So I'm like, hello. She goes, hi. And I said, I'm kind of doing some detective work. And I'm looking for and she goes, were you born on the 4th of July? And I said, yeah, but I'm thinking that lady could have told her that. You know, they were trying to get money out of me or something. And so I go, yeah. And then she goes, because this isn't on the birth certificate. And because they had it changed. And she goes, was your name once Larry? No way she would know that because she's the one who named me Larry. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, I guess that makes me your mom.
Oh my God.
And I threw the phone on the ground. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. I could hear her going, hello? Hello.
But your heart stopped. Your heart stopped. Your whole world stopped in that moment because what you wanted was reconnection.
No, my entire world started. Because it was everything I had ever wanted. When one thing ends, another one begins. And that is what had happened to me. God never closes a door without opening a window. And, you know, thank God, he, you know, to this day, I still tell people, God had always constantly whispered to me, in all times, not to believe in wall talk. Oh, don't worry. Why don't you just get over it? Oh, you'll find a way around it. Oh, just wait. You'll come from underneath this. That's wall talk. Right. Opportunities don't come with walls. Have you ever heard of a wall of opportunity? No, they're doors of opportunity, windows of opportunity. And the reason they're doors and windows, because God knows if you can see through it, you can finally know how to get through it. And that's what that day did for me. And, you know, I mean, dropping my birth certificate and the woman behind me, there's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything, every step is numbered. Everything has a place. Everything. There are no mistakes in this world, only blessings and miracles that are becoming.
Right.
That's all there is.
You know, you're getting a huge response from the audience tonight. I said earlier that this story will be a powerful one and one that would help people to get further along in their journey. What would you say right now, Lauren, as you continue to be strong and resilient to people across America or even all across the face of the earth right now who might be self-sabotaging because they've never had the chance to grieve? What would you say to them right now?
You know, you have to, first of all, you have to believe in something greater than yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to listen to that voice. You know, there's a reason. How many times have we made mistakes, excuse me, or things that we considered mistakes because there really aren't any. Mm-hmm. But you make a decision that you regret later. You go, something told me, you know what, if I'd have followed my first mind, the thing that guided me and kept me alive, unlike so many kids, the 3 that were in that original home with me that didn't make it out alive out of the system, but I did, was because I always listened to the I words: innate, instinct, intuition, insight, because there's a reason they all start with I. Right. Because they're inside you. It is the one place nobody can get to unless you give them permission. You gave them access to come inside of here and in here. We open the door and we welcome people. We invite them in. And so I didn't do a lot of inviting in. I made everything a case study. You know, that's why now when people are, you know, living in this pandemic and behind the mask, I always did anyway. Because I always pretended I was invisible and they can't see me watching them and studying them. That's how I did it when I was a little kid. And, you know, it kept me safe. God is with you in all things.
Right. Now, when you had this new beginning in your life, because you got that closure that you needed, which was really an opening for you. Once you got that, was that the moment from which you sprang into the career that you've had so far as your singing career, you're a motivational person, you're a writer, or were there some more challenges that you had to go through once you got over that first milestone of reconnecting with your mother?
Oh, when I first met my birth mom, I didn't do anything. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't really drink much at all. I definitely hadn't done any drugs. I might have smoked a little weed earlier in life, but nothing like full out blown crack addiction, which is what happened. And
so you dealt with the crack addiction after you reconnect. Okay, I want you to talk about that, and I want you to talk about how you overcame that.
Well, the thing was, I overcame it because you can stop. You have control to stop what you started. Nobody did that to me. I did it. And the thing about it was, just like when they said, "Oh, you have the Midas touch," it was because I believed what I saw and felt in my spirit. I believed it. I believed the I words. I believed the gentle whisper of what was greater than me. And I never questioned it. I never questioned it. If I went on an audition or I did something, I never questioned it. I'm walking away with it. Simple as that. I already know. All I have to do is go in there and prove and convince them. And so, but what happened was, when I had laid all my cards on the table, I just assumed, just like I thought I had never considered my mom not wanting me for a second time. Thank God she did. But my siblings, they had grown up thinking I was being told I was dead, or they assumed I was dead, because every year on the 4th of July, they said after my mom fed them and gave them their sparklers, she'd go in her bedroom and lock herself in. And they could hear her crying every year. Oh yeah, yeah, and yes, my siblings, yes, oh yeah. This is what I'm getting at. Then we had that thing, just like on the movie Soul Food, where everybody flew in or drove in, and they were frying fish and cornbread and greens, and it was all about me. And the kids would run in like they'd known me all their lives, just jump on me, Uncle Lauren, Uncle Lauren. But then what happened was, my mom had asked me to move in. It was a month after we met. She didn't like that big old man lease car I had and said, you need a sporty car. You're a young man. And she bought me a red Toyota Celica Super convertible.
Wow.
I didn't ask for it. She had me move in. It was just her and my Uncle Walter in that house. And she said, move in. And I did. And the day after they all left and went back to their respective homes, I put that car took it to the Toyota dealer so it could get undercoated. So I stayed home from work that day. I worked at Whirlpool at the time, and my mom went to work at 3. 10 minutes after she went to work, I heard car doors, and I was taking a nap upstairs, and I looked out the window. It was all of them. I said, oh my God, my siblings are back. They didn't want it to end. And so I'm bending down on the side of the bed, tying my shoes, and I hear them. It was winter. I heard them on the front steps beating their boots off and stuff, and they were like, what are we going to do about this guy? And I'm like, what? How do we know it's really him? How do we know he didn't assume our brother's name? Look, he's already here to take from her. I hate him. I wish he had stayed dead. I heard all kinds of things, and I just fell on the floor, and I couldn't believe it. And the next thing you know, the closet door was open, and I just rolled in there and pulled it shut. And I was in a fetal position. I stayed in there for 3 days. And later my mom said, it was 2 days into it. I heard you up there, but God told me, don't worry, let him be. He'll come out when he's ready. And I came out and I went to a place called a center to get evaluated. I was like, what just happened to me? And I wasn't even in there telling my story to the psychiatrist, not even 5 minutes. And he was writing a prescription. And I said, what is that? He goes, it's a prescription. I said, for what? He said, lithium. I said, well, how long will I have to take it? He goes, all your life. Something told me. The voice said, get up, leave. And I got up and I left. And he told me to go to church with my mom, talk to someone there, and I didn't. And the day after I decided not to go with her, I was in my backyard, and the girl next door said, hey, why are you so down? Here, hit this joint. And I knew there was something around that moment, like a bubble of heat. A heat wave, like on the dash or the hood of a car. Something was at work there. And I knew it. I heard the voice saying, don't do it. Don't do it. And I did. And that one hit had crack on it.
How long did it take you to overcome that circumstance?
14 years.
14 years. Lauren, there are many people out there in the world today who lost their parents to drugs or alcohol because their parents never overcame that fight. And so I think it's very divine that you were able to get past that. If there's anybody out there right now who's dealing with a drug or alcohol addiction, do you have any encouraging words for them tonight?
Yeah.
Let's get them through. Let's get them through. There's 2 things happening tonight that you have the power to help people get through. There are young people. There are adults out there sabotaging themselves because they never got a chance to grieve. You got past that. And there's people out there who are dealing with a drug and alcohol problem. And you have some words for them tonight as well.
I'll tell you what it is. In order to pick something up, you're going to have to put something down.
That's right.
And I had to come full circle and be reminded of what God put in front of me back when I had nothing, what people thought when I was in the system. And they said, you got to go, the Midas touch. And I'll tell you when it changed for me. When I took a chance and I said, I want to stop. I don't care what it has to do. And my mom was dying. And I told her, I waited. I was the last one to go in the room with her. She was at home on hospice because I waited for her real kids to have their time. And she turned over and she barely could talk. She was in stage 4 lung cancer. And she said, remember the day you met me and I told you I would die happy because of that moment? I said, yeah. She goes, that moment is now. She goes, but I'm also a little sad. I said, why? She goes, because I've seen where God is taking you. And you're going to be a very sad man a lot of the time and disappointed. I said, why? She goes, because your expectations for others will always be greater than they have for themselves. But you keep going because God has a wonderful plan for you. I left there that night, and 10 minutes later, they called me and said, come back. She's gone. 2 weeks later, I got my first job. I was still on parole. I was still living in the Salvation Army shelter, and I was on my way to this job where I had high school diploma at the time and 13 cents and a bus token in my pocket. And I was going, 5 of us were going to report to this training for a week. And I said, how can I be going to this job? How did I get this job? And all the people there have at